The morning sun was already high when Lisa pulled into the small parking lot behind the community center. She was running late, but that was nothing new these days. Between managing her business and trying to give back to the community, her schedule was always packed tight. She grabbed her volunteer badge from the dashboard and clipped it to her old college sweatshirt. The fabric was soft and faded from years of washing, with a small hole near the hem that she kept meaning to fix but never found time for. Her jeans were comfortable but far from fashionable, and her sneakers had seen better days. This wasn't exactly the image people expected from someone in her position, but comfort mattered more when you were spending the morning serving meals to families in need. The community center was buzzing with activity. Volunteers moved around the kitchen, preparing lunchboxes for local families struggling to make ends meet. Lisa had been coming here every Tuesday morning for the past year, ever since she realized how many people in her own neighborhood were facing hard times. "You made it," called out Mrs. Chen, the center's coordinator. She was a tiny woman with endless energy, who somehow managed to organize dozens of volunteers every week. "We're running behind today. The food delivery came late." Lisa rolled up her sleeves and got to work. There was something peaceful about the simple tasks here: filling containers with soup, packing sandwiches, adding fruit to each bag. No complicated business decisions, no difficult conversations with suppliers, no worrying about profit margins. Just helping people get through another day. "How many families are we serving today?" Lisa asked, sealing another container. 230, Mrs. Chen replied without looking up from her clipboard. "More than last month. Things are getting harder for folks around here." Lisa nodded quietly. She knew the feeling of uncertainty, though her struggles were different now. 3 years ago, she had taken the biggest risk of her life. After working for someone else's fashion business for nearly a decade, she had finally opened her own boutique in the city's most expensive shopping district. Everyone told her she was crazy. The rent alone was more than most people's entire monthly income. The competition was fierce, with established stores that had been around for decades. But Lisa had a vision. She wanted to create a place where fashion met art, where every piece told a story, where customers felt truly special. The first year was brutal. There were nights she lay awake wondering if she would have to close if she had made a terrible mistake. But slowly, things started to turn around. Her eye for unique pieces and genuine care for customers began to build a loyal following. By the second year, she was breaking even. By the third, she was actually making a profit. Now Elegant Rose, her boutique, was becoming known as one of the must-visit destinations for luxury fashion in the city. Celebrities had started shopping there. Fashion bloggers wrote about her collections. But success hadn't changed who she was at heart. "I think that's the last batch," said Tommy, one of the regular volunteers. He was a retired teacher who had been coming here longer than anyone. "Those families are going to be so grateful." Lisa smiled as she helped load the last few boxes into the delivery van. Her phone buzzed with a text message and she glanced at the screen. It was from Kelly, her assistant manager at the boutique. "Busy afternoon today. New guy is handling it well. Everything under control." The new guy Kelly mentioned was Brian, a sales associate who had just started working at Elegant Rose 2 weeks ago. He came with excellent references from another high-end store downtown and seemed to know the luxury retail business inside and out. During his interview, he talked confidently about customer service and building relationships with wealthy clients. Lisa had been impressed with his knowledge of designer brands and his polished appearance. He always dressed impeccably, his hair perfectly styled, his shoes shined to a mirror finish. He looked exactly like what people expected from someone working in a luxury boutique. But something about him had made Lisa slightly uncomfortable, though she couldn't put her finger on what it was. Maybe it was the way his smile seemed a little too practiced, or how he kept mentioning the right kind of clientele during his interview. She had pushed those concerns aside, telling herself she was being too picky. Good sales associates were hard to find, and Brian clearly had experience. After helping clean up the kitchen, Lisa said goodbye to the other volunteers and walked back to her car. Her hands smelled like soap and still felt slightly sticky from handling food containers. She looked at her reflection in the car window and laughed softly. Her hair was escaping from its ponytail, and there was a small stain on her sweatshirt from where she had splashed soup. She looked nothing like the successful business owner she actually was. Anyone seeing her right now would probably assume she was just another volunteer. Maybe someone struggling to make ends meet herself. It was funny how much people judged based on appearances. Lisa checked the time on her phone. It was already past 2 in the afternoon, and she had planned to stop by the boutique to see how things were going. She usually tried to visit at least once during busy periods, not because she didn't trust her staff, but because she liked to observe from a customer's perspective. Sometimes she would pretend to be a regular shopper, browsing the racks and listening to how her employees interacted with clients. It was one of the best ways to make sure her vision for customer service was being followed. She believed that every person who walked through those doors deserved to be treated with respect and kindness, regardless of what they looked like or how much money they appeared to have. The drive to the shopping district took about 20 minutes. As she got closer to her store, Lisa could see more and more luxury cars parked along the streets. BMWs, Mercedes, a few Ferraris scattered here and there. Her own modest Honda looked quite out of place among all the expensive vehicles. She found a parking spot about a block away from Elegant Rose and walked slowly toward her store. The afternoon sun was warm, and the sidewalks were busy with well-dressed shoppers carrying bags from various boutiques. Lisa felt a bit self-conscious in her casual clothes, but she reminded herself that she had every right to be here. As she approached her boutique, she could see through the large front windows that it was indeed busy inside. Several customers were browsing, and she could see Brian moving around the store, gesturing animatedly as he spoke to someone. Kelly was at the register, helping another customer with a purchase. Lisa paused outside for a moment, watching the scene unfold. This was her dream realized, her vision come to life. A beautiful space filled with carefully chosen pieces. Customers enjoying the experience of shopping somewhere special. Her team working hard to create something magical. She took a deep breath and pushed open the glass door, ready to see how her newest employee was handling the afternoon rush. The soft chime of the entrance bell announced Lisa's arrival, but the sound was quickly swallowed by the gentle classical music playing throughout the store. The interior of Elegant Rose was exactly as she had envisioned it when she first signed the lease. Cream-colored walls provided the perfect backdrop for the carefully arranged displays of dresses, each piece positioned to catch the light from the crystal chandeliers hanging overhead. Lisa moved quietly toward a rack of evening gowns, pretending to browse while observing her staff in action. The boutique had been designed with subtle mirrors placed strategically around the space, allowing her to watch different areas without being obvious about it. She could see Brian near the back of the store, speaking with a middle-aged woman who was examining a navy blue cocktail dress. Even from a distance, Lisa could tell he was in his element. His posture was confident, his gestures smooth and practiced. He looked like he belonged in this world of luxury fashion. "These pieces are from our exclusive collection," she heard him saying to his customer. "Only the finest materials, of course. We cater to a very selective clientele who appreciate true quality." The customer nodded, clearly impressed by his knowledge. Brian continued explaining the dress's details, pointing out the hand-sewn beading and imported fabric. His customer seemed pleased with the attention and expertise. Lisa felt a small sense of relief. Maybe her initial concerns about Brian had been unfounded. He certainly knew how to handle wealthy customers, and his confidence seemed to be translating into sales. She moved to another section of the store, running her fingers along a silk scarf while continuing to observe. Kelly was still at the register, carefully wrapping a purchase in the boutique's signature tissue paper. Lisa had always insisted on beautiful packaging, believing that the entire experience should feel special from start to finish. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the front windows, creating patterns on the polished marble floor. A few more customers entered, browsing quietly among the displays. Lisa noticed how they naturally spoke in hushed tones, as if the elegance of the space demanded a certain level of reverence. She picked up a black evening gown from the rack, holding it up to examine the craftsmanship. The price tag showed $4,000, which had seemed impossibly expensive to her just a few years ago. Now she understood the value in every stitch, every carefully chosen button, every detail that made a piece truly exceptional. "Excuse me," came a voice from behind her. Lisa turned to see Brian approaching. Up close, she could see that his smile was indeed very practiced, the kind of expression that could be turned on and off like a light switch. His eyes did a quick scan of her appearance, and she watched his face change almost imperceptibly. "Can I help you find something?" he asked. though his tone was already becoming less warm than what she had heard him use with his previous customer. "I'm just looking around," Lisa replied, curious to see how this would play out. Brian's smile became a bit more forced. "Of course, just so you know, our pieces are quite expensive. This dress you're holding is $4,000. Lisa nodded calmly. "I can see the price tag." There was a brief pause as Brian seemed to be calculating his next move. Lisa could almost see the wheels turning in his head as he tried to figure out how to handle someone who clearly didn't fit his image of their typical customer. "We also have a sister store downtown. That might be more suitable," he said, his voice taking on a slightly condescending tone. "They carry more accessible pieces, more in line with everyday budgets." Lisa raised an eyebrow but kept her expression neutral. "What makes you think this isn't in line with my budget?" Brian's discomfort was becoming more obvious. He glanced around the store as if looking for backup, but Kelly was still busy with her customer, and the other shoppers were absorbed in their own browsing. "Well," he said, gesturing vaguely at her outfit, "I just want to make sure you don't waste your time looking at things that might not be practical for you." The condescension in his voice was becoming impossible to ignore. Lisa felt her jaw tighten slightly, but she maintained her composure. This was exactly the kind of behavior she had hoped to avoid when hiring staff. The whole point of Elegant Rose was to create an inclusive environment where people felt welcome regardless of their appearance. "I appreciate your concern," she said evenly, "but I think I can determine for myself what's practical." Brian's smile disappeared entirely. "Look, I'm trying to help you here. These dresses cost more than most people make in a month. I don't want you to be embarrassed when you see the prices." Other customers were starting to notice the exchange. Lisa could see a woman near the jewelry display glancing over with curiosity, while an older gentleman by the handbags had paused his browsing to listen. "I'm not embarrassed," Lisa said quietly. "Are you?" The question seemed to catch Brian off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean, are you embarrassed by how you're treating a potential customer?" Brian's face flushed slightly. "I'm doing my job. I'm protecting our brand and our other customers from disruptions." The word disruptions hung in the air like a challenge. Lisa felt anger building inside her chest, but she forced herself to remain calm. This was a teaching moment, though Brian didn't know it yet. "What kind of disruptions are you worried about?" she asked. "Look," Brian said, his voice dropping but becoming more intense. "This is a high-end establishment. We have a reputation to maintain. Our customers expect a certain level of exclusivity." The conversation was starting to draw more attention. Kelly had finished with her customer and was now watching with growing concern. She knew Lisa well enough to recognize the dangerous calm in her voice, even if she couldn't hear the exact words being spoken. "And you don't think I belong here?" Lisa asked. "I think," Brian said, straightening his tie, "that you would be more comfortable somewhere else. Somewhere more appropriate for someone in your situation." Lisa looked around the store that she had built from nothing, at the displays she had personally arranged, at the customers who had come to trust her vision and taste. 3 years of hard work, of sleepless nights, of risking everything she had to create something beautiful and meaningful. And here was an employee she had hired barely 2 weeks ago, trying to kick her out of her own store. "My situation," she repeated slowly. "Yes, I mean, look at yourself. Those clothes, that hair, you obviously don't understand what this place is about." The classical music continued playing softly in the background, a stark contrast to the tension that was building between them. Lisa could see Kelly starting to move toward them, concern written across her face. "Tell me," Lisa said, "what do you think this place is about?" Brian seemed surprised by the question, but he answered confidently. "Elegance, sophistication, serving clients who appreciate the finer things in life. People who belong in a place like this." "And I don't belong, honestly?" "No, I don't think you do." The words hung between them like a gauntlet thrown down. Lisa felt something shift inside her, a decision being made. She had given Brian every opportunity to correct course, to remember the basic principles of customer service and human decency. Instead, he had doubled down on his prejudice. Kelly was close enough now to hear the conversation, and Lisa could see the horror dawning on her assistant manager's face as she realized what was happening. Lisa looked directly into Brian's eyes, her voice remaining perfectly calm despite the storm brewing inside her. "That's interesting," she said. Because I think you're about to discover exactly how wrong you are. Brian's confidence wavered for just a moment at the certainty in Lisa's voice, but he quickly recovered his composure. He had dealt with difficult customers before, people who didn't want to accept the reality of their situation. In his mind, this was just another case of someone getting defensive when faced with the truth. "Listen," he said, adopting what he probably thought was a patient tone. "I understand you might be upset, but I'm just trying to save everyone some trouble here. Why don't you just head to the mall? They have some nice stores there that would be perfect for someone like you." The phrase "someone like you" seemed to echo through the boutique. Several customers had now stopped their browsing entirely and were watching the exchange with a mixture of fascination and discomfort. Lisa could see an elderly woman near the scarves shaking her head disapprovingly, though whether at Brian's behavior or at Lisa's presence was unclear. Kelly was now close enough to intervene, but Lisa caught her eye and gave a subtle shake of her head. Not yet. She wanted to see just how far Brian would take this. "Someone like me," Lisa repeated thoughtfully. "Tell me, Brian, what exactly do you think you know about me?" Brian seemed encouraged by what he interpreted as her willingness to engage with his logic. "Well, it's obvious, isn't it? I mean, look at how you're dressed. Those sneakers probably cost less than our cheapest accessory. That sweatshirt looks like it came from a thrift store. Your hair—" he gestured dismissively. "You clearly don't take care of yourself the way our clientele does." Each word was like a small slap, but Lisa absorbed them without flinching. She had learned long ago that people's assumptions said far more about them than about her. Still, hearing such blatant prejudice from someone she had trusted enough to hire was deeply disappointing. "Go on," she said quietly. Brian seemed to take her calm response as validation. "And your car. I saw you walk up from that old Honda parked down the street. Our customers drive BMWs, Porsches, Mercedes. They arrive in style because they understand that image matters in this business." Lisa nodded slowly. "Image matters, exactly. You get it. So you can see why having someone like you browsing around here might make our real customers uncomfortable. It's nothing personal, it's just business." The boutique had fallen almost completely silent except for the soft music. Even the classical pieces seemed to be playing more quietly, as if the sound system itself was holding its breath for what would come next. "Nothing personal," Lisa echoed. "Just business." "Right. Look, you seem like a nice enough person, but this just isn't your world. There's nothing wrong with that. We all have our place in life." Lisa felt something cold settle in her stomach at those words. Our place in life. As if people were destined to stay in whatever box society put them in. As if hard work and determination and dreams didn't matter. Kelly had moved close enough now to hear every word, and Lisa could see the fury building in her assistant manager's eyes. Kelly had been with her since the boutique opened, had seen Lisa work 18-hour days to make this dream a reality. She knew exactly what Brian's words would mean to her boss. "Our place in life," Lisa said softly. "That's an interesting way to put it." Brian nodded earnestly, apparently thinking he was getting through to her. "See, you understand. Some people are meant for luxury shopping and others aren't. It's not a judgment, it's just reality. And you think you can tell which is which just by looking at someone? Of course. It's part of my job. I've been in luxury retail for 8 years. You develop an eye for these things. I can spot our target demographic from across the street." Lisa glanced around her store, at the beautiful displays she had personally arranged, at the carefully chosen lighting that made everything look perfect, at the customers who were now openly staring at the confrontation unfolding before them. 8 years, she said. "That's impressive." Brian straightened his shoulders, clearly pleased with what he saw as recognition of his expertise. "Thank you. I've worked at some of the most exclusive stores in the city. I know what I'm talking about. And in all those 8 years, did you ever make a mistake? Ever misjudge someone?" Brian's smile became slightly patronizing. "Look, I appreciate that you're trying to argue your case here, but the evidence is pretty clear. I mean, you were probably just curious about how the other half lives, right? There's nothing wrong with window shopping, but let's not pretend you're actually in the market for a $4,000 dress." The assumption hung in the air like a challenge. Lisa looked down at the black evening gown she was still holding, feeling the weight of the silk in her hands. She remembered the day she had discovered this particular piece at a trade show in Milan. How she had fallen in love with the way the fabric caught the light. How she had negotiated with the designer to get it exclusively for her store. You know what's interesting, Brian? She said, her voice still perfectly calm. You keep talking about image and appearances and first impressions, but you're making some pretty big assumptions based on very little information. Brian waved a hand dismissively. Sometimes you don't need much information. Sometimes the truth is right in front of you. Is it? Look, I'm trying to be nice about this, but you're starting to make a scene. Other customers are staring. This is exactly the kind of situation I was trying to avoid. Lisa looked around at the other shoppers who were indeed staring, but not necessarily for the reasons Brian thought. She could see confusion on some faces, embarrassment on others. The elderly woman near the scarves was now looking distinctly uncomfortable with Brian's behavior. A scene, Lisa repeated. You think I'm making a scene? Yes. And it's affecting the shopping experience for our real customers. There it was again. Real customers. As if the worth of a human being could be measured by their clothing or their car or their hairstyle. Kelly had heard enough. Lisa could see her assistant manager taking a step forward, her face flushed with anger. But Lisa held up a subtle hand, stopping her once more. This wasn't over yet. Tell me something, Brian, Lisa said. What would you do if you found out you were wrong about me? Brian laughed, a sound that was both dismissive and cruel. Wrong? Look, I appreciate your optimism, but I'm not wrong. Trust me, I know exactly what I'm looking at, do you? Lady, you walked in here wearing clothes that probably cost less than our bathroom soap. You're driving a car that's older than some of our employees. You look like you haven't seen the inside of a high-end salon in months. What exactly am I supposed to be wrong about? Each observation was delivered with increasing confidence, as if Brian truly believed he was being helpful by spelling out the obvious. Lisa could see that in his mind, he was the rational one here, the voice of reason trying to help someone accept reality. So, in your professional opinion, Lisa said slowly, there is absolutely no chance that you might be mistaken about who I am or what I can afford? Brian's smile was now openly condescending. None whatsoever. Lisa nodded thoughtfully as if considering his words carefully. Then she looked directly at Kelly, who was watching the exchange with barely contained fury. Kelly, Lisa said clearly, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet boutique. I think it's time. The moment Kelly heard her name, her expression changed from barely contained anger to something that might have been relief mixed with anticipation. She had been watching this painful exchange unfold, knowing exactly who Brian was insulting, and waiting for the moment when the truth would finally come out. Yes, Ms. Rodriguez, Kelly said clearly, her voice carrying across the boutique. Brian's head snapped toward Kelly, confusion replacing his previous confidence. Something in Kelly's tone, the formal way she had addressed Lisa, the sudden shift in the atmosphere of the store, all combined to create a moment of uncertainty. Ms. Rodriguez? Brian repeated, his voice uncertain for the first time since the conversation began. Lisa smiled, but it wasn't a warm expression. It was the kind of smile that comes right before everything changes, before someone's world gets turned completely upside down. Brian, Lisa said, her voice still calm but now carrying an unmistakable note of authority. I'd like you to meet Lisa Rodriguez. That would be me. The owner of Elegant Rose Boutique. The words seemed to hang in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Brian's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Confusion, disbelief, and then a growing horror as the implications began to sink in. Owner, he whispered, the word barely audible. That's right, Lisa continued, her voice gaining strength. This store that you've been so concerned about protecting? This brand you've been worried about maintaining? This clientele you've been so eager to serve? It's all mine. The color drained from Brian's face so quickly that Lisa was momentarily concerned he might actually faint. His mouth opened and closed several times without any sound coming out, like a fish gasping for air. The other customers in the boutique had gone completely silent, realizing they were witnessing something extraordinary. The elderly woman near the scarves had her hand pressed to her chest, her eyes wide with shock. A younger couple by the jewelry display were staring openly, no longer pretending to browse. But you, Brian stammered, still trying to process what he had just heard. Me, Lisa confirmed. The person you've spent the last 10 minutes trying to kick out of her own store. The person you decided didn't belong here based on her clothes and her car and her hairstyle. The person you assumed couldn't possibly afford anything here because she doesn't look the way you think wealthy people should look. Kelly stepped forward, her loyalty to Lisa evident in every line of her body. "Ms. Rodriguez opened this boutique 3 years ago," she said, her voice carrying a note of pride. "She handpicked every piece in this store. She designed the layout, chose the lighting, created the entire atmosphere you've been so concerned about protecting." Brian's legs seemed to be having trouble supporting him. He reached out and gripped the edge of a nearby display case for support, his knuckles white with the effort. "This can't be. I mean, you look—" He started, then stopped, apparently realizing that finishing that sentence would only make things worse. "I look like what, Brian?" Lisa asked, stepping closer to him. "Like someone who doesn't belong in a place like this? Like someone who couldn't possibly understand luxury or fashion or business?" "I didn't know," Brian said weakly, as if that somehow excused everything he had said and done. "You didn't know," Lisa repeated. "That's true. You didn't know anything about me. But that didn't stop you from making judgments, did it? It didn't stop you from deciding I wasn't worthy of being here." The boutique was so quiet now that the soft classical music seemed almost overwhelming. Lisa could hear the faint tick of the antique clock on the wall behind the register, could hear someone's breathing somewhere in the store. "Look," Brian said, his voice desperate now. "I was just trying to do my job. I was trying to protect the store's image. You have to understand, in luxury retail, appearance matters. First impressions are everything." "First impressions," Lisa said thoughtfully. "You're absolutely right about that, Brian. First impressions do matter. And the first impression you've made on me is that you're exactly the kind of employee I never want representing my business." Brian's eyes widened as the full implications of his situation began to dawn on him. "Ms. Rodriguez, please let me explain. I can change. I can do better. Can you?" Lisa asked. "Because what I've witnessed here isn't just a mistake, Brian. It's not just poor judgment. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of what this business is supposed to be about." She gestured around the store, at the beautiful displays, and the carefully arranged merchandise. "When I created Elegant Rose, I had a vision. I wanted to build a place where anyone could come and feel welcome, where the quality of our service wasn't dependent on the quality of someone's clothes." Kelly nodded emphatically. "Ms. Rodriguez has always insisted that we treat every customer with respect and dignity, regardless of how they look or what they're wearing." "That's right," Lisa continued. "Because you never know who might walk through that door. You never know what someone's story is, what they've been through, what they're capable of. The woman in the faded jeans might be a successful businesswoman who just came from volunteering at a homeless shelter. The man in the old jacket might be a millionaire who doesn't feel the need to show off his wealth." Brian was nodding frantically now, as if agreeing with everything she said could somehow undo the last 15 minutes. "Yes, absolutely, you're completely right. I understand that now. Do you?" Lisa asked skeptically. "Because understanding it now after you've been caught making a terrible mistake is very different from understanding it when it matters." One of the customers, the elderly woman who had been watching the entire exchange, stepped forward. She was impeccably dressed in what Lisa recognized as a vintage Chanel suit, her gray hair perfectly styled, her jewelry clearly expensive. "Excuse me," the woman said, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being heard. "I couldn't help but overhear this conversation." Lisa turned to her, wondering what this well-dressed customer might add to the situation. "I've been shopping in high-end boutiques for over 40 years, the woman continued, "and I have never in all that time witnessed such appalling behavior from a sales associate. Young man, you should be ashamed of yourself." Brian's face somehow managed to turn an even deeper shade of red. "Ma'am, I'm not finished," the woman said sharply. "What you displayed here today wasn't professionalism or brand protection. It was pure snobbery and prejudice. You made assumptions about this lady based on nothing but her appearance, and then you compounded that error by being rude and condescending." She turned to Lisa with a look of respect. "Ms. Rodriguez, I've been a customer here for 2 years, and I've always admired the way your staff treats everyone who walks through that door. This young man clearly doesn't understand the values you've worked so hard to instill." Lisa felt a warm surge of gratitude toward this unexpected ally. "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. That means more to me than you know." Mrs. Patterson nodded firmly, then looked back at Brian with obvious distaste. "In my day, we understood that true class has nothing to do with what you wear, and everything to do with how you treat others." Brian looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. The confrontation that had started with his confidence and condescension had turned into a public humiliation that was only getting worse by the minute. The weight of Mrs. Patterson's words seemed to settle over the boutique like a heavy blanket. Brian stood there, his perfectly styled hair now slightly disheveled from running his hands through it, his expensive suit somehow looking less impressive than it had just minutes before. Lisa watched him carefully, seeing not just his obvious distress but trying to understand what had led to this moment. In her years of running the boutique, she had encountered prejudice before, but never from someone she had trusted enough to hire. "Brian," she said finally, her voice softer now but still firm, "I need you to understand something. This isn't just about one bad interaction with a customer. This is about the fundamental values that drive everything we do here." Brian nodded eagerly, desperate to show that he was listening, that he could still somehow salvage this situation. "When someone walks into Elegant Rose," Lisa continued, "they're not just entering a store, they're entering a space that I've poured my heart and soul into. Every detail, from the way the light hits the merchandise to the music we play, has been carefully chosen to create an experience." She gestured toward the displays around them, each one arranged with the care of an artist creating a masterpiece. "But none of that matters if the people representing my brand don't understand what we're really selling here. We're not just selling clothes, Brian. We're selling confidence, beauty, the feeling that someone is special and valued." Kelly stepped closer, her loyalty to Lisa evident in her protective posture. "Ms. Rodriguez spent months training our original staff," she added. "She wanted to make sure everyone understood that luxury isn't about excluding people. It's about making everyone feel included in something beautiful." Brian's voice, when he finally found it, was barely above a whisper. "I thought I was protecting the store. I thought I was doing what was expected." "Expected by whom?" Lisa asked. "By some imaginary standard of what luxury retail should be. By outdated ideas about who deserves to be treated well and who doesn't." The younger couple who had been browsing near the jewelry display approached cautiously. The woman spoke first, her voice hesitant but determined. "Excuse me. I hope you don't mind me saying something," she began, looking directly at Lisa. "My husband and I have been coming here for about 6 months and we've always felt so welcome. The staff has always been wonderful, never making us feel like we didn't belong even though we're probably younger than most of your customers." Her husband nodded in agreement. "When we bought my wife's cocktail dress for her company party here last month, your team made us feel like we were the most important customers in the world. That's why we keep coming back." Lisa smiled at them, remembering the young couple who had been so excited about finding the perfect dress for an important event. It was exactly these kinds of moments that made all her hard work worthwhile. "Thank you," she said warmly. "That's exactly the experience I want everyone to have here." Brian looked even more miserable as he realized how completely he had misunderstood his role. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "I don't know what I was thinking. I've ruined everything." Lisa studied his face, seeing genuine remorse there along with the obvious fear for his job. Part of her felt sorry for him, but she also knew that some mistakes couldn't be overlooked, especially when they struck at the heart of everything she had tried to build. "Brian," she said carefully, "I appreciate that you're sorry, but I need you to understand that this isn't just about apologizing and moving on. What happened here today revealed something fundamental about your attitude toward people, and that's not something that can be easily fixed." "But I can change," Brian said desperately. "I can learn. I promise I'll never make assumptions about customers again." Kelly shook her head sadly. "It shouldn't take getting caught making a mistake for someone to understand basic human decency," she said quietly. Mrs. Patterson, who had been listening to the entire exchange, spoke up again. "Young man, the problem isn't that you made a mistake. The problem is the kind of mistake you made. You looked at someone and decided they weren't worthy of respect, based on nothing but their appearance. That kind of thinking doesn't change overnight." Lisa nodded slowly, feeling the weight of the decision she knew she had to make. Running a business meant making difficult choices, and sometimes those choices involved people's livelihoods. "Brian," she said, "I'm going to be honest with you. What happened here today goes against everything I believe in, and everything this store represents. I can't have someone working here who would treat any customer the way you treated me." Brian's shoulders sagged as he realized what was coming. "You're firing me." "Yes," Lisa said simply. "I am. The finality of those words seemed to echo through the boutique. Brian stood there for a moment longer as if hoping she might change her mind, but Lisa's expression remained resolute. "I'll collect my things," he said quietly, his earlier confidence completely gone. "Kelly will help you with that," Lisa replied. "And Brian? I hope you learned something from this experience. I hope you use it to become a better person." As Brian walked toward the back of the store with Kelly, the other customers began to disperse, the drama apparently over. But Mrs. Patterson lingered, approaching Lisa with a thoughtful expression. "You handled that very well, my dear," the older woman said. "It couldn't have been easy, but you did the right thing." "Thank you," Lisa replied. "Sometimes doing the right thing is the hardest thing. Indeed it is. But that's what separates true leaders from everyone else." Over the following weeks, word of what had happened at Elegant Rose began to spread through the local fashion community. Some people heard it as a cautionary tale about making assumptions, while others saw it as an example of a business owner who truly stood behind her values. Lisa found herself busier than ever, not just with customers but with job applicants who had heard about her commitment to respectful customer service. She took her time with each interview, making sure that anyone she hired truly understood what Elegant Rose was all about. 3 months later, as she stood in her boutique watching her carefully chosen team interact with customers of all kinds, Lisa reflected on how the incident with Brian had actually strengthened her business. The customers who came to Elegant Rose now knew they would be treated well regardless of their appearance, and her staff understood that they were part of something larger than just selling clothes. She still volunteered at the community center every Tuesday morning, still drove her modest Honda, still wore comfortable clothes when she wasn't working. The difference was that now everyone at her boutique knew exactly who she was, and more importantly, what she stood for. Sometimes the most difficult moments in life become the most valuable lessons. For Lisa, being judged and dismissed in her own store had been painful, but it had also been a powerful reminder of why she had started this business in the first place. Not just to sell beautiful clothes, but to create a space where everyone could feel beautiful, valued, and respected. And that, she knew, was worth far more than any single sale.